Good to see you, sir. We have, as the political press, written the obituary of Donald Trump since he came down the golden escalator in 2015. Everything was the time that he had finally done himself in. Is there any reason to think this is different?
I think there is. First of all, the country is exhausted by Mr. Trump. They like his policies, but the policies they like, they would get from any Republican: conservative judges, strong defense, tax cuts. What they get and only get from Trump that's unique is this exhausting, constant cloud of turmoil that he trails wherever he goes.
So you think about sort of what's happened over the past week. New York Post, deniers denied, voters punished Trump-backed candidates. This would be at least the third New York Post front page, by my count, since the election, going after Donald Trump specifically. But the flip side of this, Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri with his own presidential ambitions, the old party is dead, time to bury it, build something new, conceivably saying build something new around Donald Trump or Trumpism.
Or around Josh Hawley. Let me tell NewsNation viewers something about Josh Hawley. When he was in the 8th grade, he signed his 8th grade yearbook for a friend. It said, President 2024. For those of you keeping score at home, that's 2 years from now. Mr. Hawley is a Washington type. He fights like a tiger to get to Washington, where he spends his time hating Washington. It seems to me that Hawley might not be exactly the person to rebuild the Republican Party.
Investigations into Trump, if he is to do anything as president. January 6th, DOJ, January 6th Select Committee, Georgia election interference, IRS, House Ways and Means, Manhattan DA, DOJ, New York AG. How much of whatever he says on tomorrow night is going to be to try and somehow inoculate himself from any potential criminal charges?
I think that he probably thinks that he announces, I'm running for president. That's the inoculation. He's banking on the fact, and it might be true, that there will be hesitance on the part of the Southern District of New York or the Department of Justice here in Washington to bring indictments against the presumptive nominee to run against the head of the administration that would be indicting him. So that's all he needs to say, I think, is that I'm running. And I assume he will. I mean, I'm not sure he would have foreshadowed this speech weeks before the election results had he known those results. But it's a little late now. Once you, saying, Leland, once you get the girl up on her tiptoes, you have to kiss her. He's got MAGA Nation up on their toes. He's got to kiss it.
But you speak about MAGA Nation. Look, I was at Trump rallies in 2015 and 2016. There was something special. There was something electric about it because he tapped into this anger. He tapped into a nationalism. He tapped into an anger among the electorate who felt as though that they had been sort of discarded by those in Washington. And he made the election, even if it wasn't genuine, he made people feel it was about themselves. 2020 was sort of half about them and half about himself being vindicated. And since that, basically every rally has been a grievance fest of everything that has been done to me, Donald Trump, and I am the victim. Does he have a chance to reset that? And if he does that change the dynamic?
Does he want to reset that? He has told us his own self that tomorrow's speech will be, and I'm quoting him, the greatest speech in the history of the United States. Now, that puts Lincoln and Gettysburg in the shade, I'm afraid, but so he has a big expectation that he's got out there. And it will be interesting to see if he comes on again with his grievances about 2020, a backward-looking, retrospective message. The American people vote about the future, and he has gone out of his way to define himself in terms of the past.
Yeah, you make a great point. Elections are about the future. That was Bill Clinton's philosophy as well, although it has been proven true through time. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.